This evening, we're going to separate ourselves from Europe. European philosophy started with knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. That's the difference. Our real spiritual ancestors, the Greeks, had a different vision. Knowledge must include an ideal, and that ideal must benefit man. And that's the difference between the moderns and the Hellenic world. Nearly all of European thought explores this idea that knowledge is power. Therefore, I'm going to introduce you to an idea, the idea of art as a knowledge that presupposes an ideal, and that ideal in every case must benefit man. Now, every time I use the word art, it's best if you ignore all modern references to art and take it in a new way. The Greek word is techne. Now, we're now going to understand the idea of art in an entirely Greek Hellenic way, and that's where we're going. So, let's start. First, I want to talk about different systems and the people who represent them. So I'm going to talk about medicine, the physician, piloting a ship or a plane, a bank robber has a certain degree of knowledge, it's a knowledge system, a merchant must have a knowledge, a dentist, and a coach. As we go through this, you should be able to see why some of these must be excluded, and why some must obviously be included. Because there are two I didn't put here, and that's going to be the evening's discussion. All right, so there are two missing. We should see whether or not we can get them in there. So again, what are we doing? We're going to look at knowledge as a particularly interesting system, a system that presupposes an ideal, and that ideal benefits man. All right, we're looking at these different systems, and therefore what we need is a model. That model, therefore, we're going to then apply to all of these, and we're going to look for the missing two. Now, as you know, my superior art gives me a chance to show off my artistry. And here you see, now everything I say about this figure should equally be applied to all of these, up to a certain point, and then there's going to be a difference, and that difference is going to be art. So,
just 1 minute.
Surely.
Came a little late. Can you go back to the first?
Oh, surely. Yeah.
Okay.
The Platonic idea of art as knowledge, and it's a special kind of idea of art. It's the idea of art as a knowledge that includes within it necessarily an ideal, and that knowledge and ideal must benefit man.
I see. Okay.
That's a totally different idea of knowledge that we're used to. We come from a European culture, and the basic idea of all European culture, European modern Christian culture, is that knowledge is power. It comes from, as you know, Bacon, who started the game going, and Descartes and these people. Knowledge is power. If you have power, you can use it. If you have used it, whether it benefits man or not is not the issue. That is Europe. We're going back to the Greeks, and I hope into the modern world, because I'd like to see this old idea revived and brought forward, because I think that's the only thing that's going to be able to save man. Fair enough?
Yes.
Okay.
These are the systems, and these are the people who represent members of that system. And here you see a beautiful picture of a man, and He's wearing a hat because certainly we can say he has the knowledge. Along comes someone. Now remember, I'm going to use the example of the physician, but in turn you should be able to apply it to the pilot of a ship, pilot of a plane, bank robber, etc., all the way down. Now, along comes someone, and you can see in this terrible picture that they are in pain and suffering. Now, what does knowledge allow this man to do that others do not have? It allows him to see through his knowledge and understand what he sees, and that advantage allows him to do something which you can only do if you have this kind of knowledge. That is, you can understand what you see. And therefore, if you have a certain kind of knowledge that you can understand why this person is the predicament and the predicament that he's in, the situation that he's in, you can then translate your opinion of his status and give a diagnosis, right? That is, through your knowledge, a gnosis, through a dia, right? Through your knowledge, you then can give an assessment of this man's condition. You can say, I know what's wrong with your condition. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a diagnosis. On the basis of the diagnosis, then, he can then give a treatment plan. And on the basis of that treatment plan, he can start a process going to reverse the condition. But he must also have a follow-up plan to make sure that the kinds of changes that he's introducing in fact occur in the way in which they should. Now, if this subject, this person, he's only a person at this point, believes that this person with the knowledge can, in fact, make this kind of a diagnosis and give this kind of a treatment plan and follow up, he then has to risk something, has to risk. There's always a risk in this kind of knowing. Have to risk that maybe he is correct. Maybe he's right about his diagnosis. The person never knows as much as the person with the knowledge, and therefore he has to believe that in fact they have the knowledge they claim to have.
That's that faith, huh?
Belief. Faith is something else. They have to have some belief. Now, if that person now goes the next step and says, I think that I can engage you, at that moment he must voluntarily, it must be voluntarily, he voluntarily enters into a relationship. It must be voluntarily. And when he does that, he changes his status. He's no longer a person, he becomes a patient, and he gets a new name. And when he enters into this relationship, this person no longer merely has knowledge, but he now is your physician.